Shut up and sit down. Shut up and sit down.
Hey guys, welcome back to Wrestle News 365. Hope everyone is doing very, very well. Hope you're having a good Friday. It's currently 5 p.m. over here in the UK, currently 12 p.m. Eastern Time over in the United States. Now I have a lot of United States listeners, subscribers to this channel. If you haven't subscribed already, now's a great time, by the way. Bottom right hand corner. Let's smash a like on this video as well, on this stream. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Bayley and Sasha Banks. Now there's been a little bit of discussion, a little bit of update as to what's going on with this storyline at the moment, because last week, of course, was the big breakup. The big breakup on Friday Night SmackDown that we knew was coming. Everyone knew the Bayley-Sasha Banks breakup was going to happen at some point, right? It was inevitable. If you're friends in the wrestling business, if you're friends or tag team partners in WWE, it's just a matter of time before one turns on the other, right? If I was a tag team wrestler, to be honest, in WWE, I'd be paranoid to hell, because I know that at some point the person that I'm tagging with is gonna turn on me. It's gonna turn on me. So it's just a matter of time. Let's double check the chat before we start. Franklin says hi. How you doing? David says hello. How you doing, David? Thanks for joining us. Smash a like on the video if you haven't already. So let's backtrack a little bit about this Bayley and Sasha Banks feud, I guess we would call it now, partnership, storyline, whatever you want to call it. So they won the Women's Tag Team Championships earlier this year. Bayley, at this point, had been SmackDown Women's Champion for a very long time. She won it when? Back in October last year for the second time. She'd only lost it for a week to Charlotte Flair, and before that she'd won it in July, I think, at Money in the Bank. So at this point, she's nearly technically in her second reign, she's nearly been champion for a whole year. But prior to that, she's been champion for prior to a year. So they win the Women's Tag Team Championship earlier this year, defeating Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. Bayley's a double champion. Bayley DOS straps, she called herself. Then they transition into Sasha Banks feuding with Asuka on Monday Night Raw. Of course, as Women's Tag Team Champions, they can go over to Monday Night Raw and challenge for the Women's Tag Team Championship, for the Raw Tag Team Championship rather. Goes to the horror show at Extreme Rules, and a horror show it was. Looking back on it at this point, sometimes, and I'm quite guilty for this, sometimes when I watch pay-per-view, and I'll try to do my best in terms of a review, dissecting it, but sometimes it just takes time to resonate as to, was that good or was that bad? The horror show at Extreme Rules, a couple of months removed now, I can categorically say that pay-per-view was bad. It was bad. So no doubt it was bad. That Asuka versus Sasha Banks match at Extreme Rules, the match itself, go back and watch it, very good. Very good. The finish, Bayley puts on a referee shirt, counts to 3. What a load of rubbish. Terrible. So that then leads to the match on Raw where Sasha Banks did win the Raw Women's Championship by countout, because you could win the match by countout or disqualification because of Stephanie McMahon's edict. So Sasha Banks won when Bayley attacks Kairi Sane backstage. Kairi Sane would then retire from WWE, I guess. Her contract expired. She's gone back to Japan now. She's going to be an ambassador for WWE there. Maybe if they open NXT Japan at some point, she'll be involved in that. But she's back in Japan to be closer to her family and her husband. So then we had the reign of both Sasha Banks and Bayley holding 2 championships, right? Bayley, SmackDown Women's Champion and Tag Team Champion. Sasha Banks, Raw Women's Champion and Tag Team Champion too. They continue this feud of Asuka. They both face Asuka at SummerSlam. Bayley faces Asuka first. She wins with a little help from Sasha Banks. Sasha Banks faces her next. It's a layup, right? It's a layup. She has to beat Asuka. Bayley already beat her early on in the night. Sasha attacked Asuka after that match too, but Sasha loses the Raw Women's Championship, and this is where the dissension happened between these two, because they then have to defend their championships, their tag team championships at Payback, and they lose to Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler. Now, I actually thought the match at Payback between Banks, Bayley, Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, I thought was really, really good. And they had the rematch on SmackDown last week, and again, really, really good. I thought the chemistry between all of these performers was absolutely fantastic. But what I will say, and if you're a fan of this channel, if you're a fan of the streams and the videos we do on here, you know what I'm going to say, that I hate it. I hate it. It's a big bugbear of mine, a pet peeve, grinds my gears, whatever phrase you can relate to. It infuriates me when a tag team that is just a thrown together tag team, 2 single stars, beats an established tag team like Bayley and Sasha Banks. It blows my mind every single time. The logic and the psychology of tag team wrestling disappears when they do that. It's so infuriating, but I understand it to a point, because at this point they needed to get the tag team titles off of Bayley and Banks because they're going towards the eventual Bayley and Sasha Banks match. The feud needed that, so I don't have a problem with them dropping the title. Again, I thought the match at Payback was actually really, really good. Really enjoyed that. And let's face it, how many actual credible female tag teams do they have in their women's tag team division? Not many. Not many, because even the ones they do have, they're splitting up left, right and centre. The Iconics on Raw, they don't exist now. They're gone. Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss, they are on life support because they won't be a tag team much longer. The Riot Squad, they've just added them together. But apart from that, your tag teams are splitting up. Asuka and Kairi Sane, they're not a tag team anymore. Who else? Who else is there? Because the tag team division, the women's tag team division, just is non-existent. WWE keeps splitting them up. So I guess maybe it had to be Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler, because who else could it be? Who else could it be? And the finish to that match, again, I loved it. And the finish to that match was so great because obviously you had the Nia Jax doubled submission on both of them. But technically, the way that Shayna Baszler did this submission, I was saying Nia Jax a second ago, Shayna Baszler, how she did this submission, she wrapped Sasha Banks' arm around Bayley's neck so that actually, technically, Sasha Banks tapped out Bayley too. That's a really subtle story beat there, but very, very good. Very, very good. Darkstar says, hello, how you doing, my friend? Thanks for joining us here on a Friday. If you haven't subscribed already, please do subscribe and smash the like button. It would really help us out here on the channel. So they had the rematch last week on SmackDown. Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler defending against Sasha Banks and Bayley. Sasha Banks and Bayley lose, and then Bayley attacks Sasha Banks after the match. Brutal attack. Loved it. Any angles like that, I think, they have to be done really well, and they were done really well. They actually, throughout the match, Sasha Banks had an injury. Was it a knee injury they sold throughout the match? And basically what they did is they went to commercial, and then when they came back from commercial, Sasha Banks is still selling the injury in the ring. She's got officials, doctors around her. And I actually tweeted at the time, as soon as I saw Sasha Banks selling an injury in the ring, she's got officials around her, doctors, and they went to commercial, I knew for a fact they're going to come back from commercial. You can go and check it on Twitter. It's there. They're going to come back from commercial. Bayley's going to help her up, and then she's going to attack her. And it's exactly what happened. I am Nostradamus. I'm Nostra WrestleNews 365. I saw it happening. I saw it coming. So Bayley attacks Sasha Banks after the match. Brutal attack. Sasha Banks does a full-on stretcher job. She goes to the hospital, and that's been the case That's been the case since. We've had a couple of storyline updates that Sasha Banks is in the hospital, etc. But at this point, we don't know when she's going to come back, if she's going to come back. Of course, she is going to come back, but we don't know when. So what should they do? Well, there is a difference here as to what they should do and what they may do. And we'll go into that in a second. But what we'll check in here, we'll check in the chat again. Noob & Co says, hello, good sir. How are you doing, my friends? David Cook says, it would work having two random singles winning the tag team titles if it happened once in the blue moon and not more often than they have done. Well, that's it. That's the problem when you don't invest in tag teams and tag team wrestling. You have to put together two random people, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense. That's WWE's philosophy on tag team wrestling, unfortunately. That's just what it is. So here's what they should do. There's a difference between should and will. Here's what they should do. Sasha Banks right now, after that brutal attack, she was injured before Bayley even attacked her. So Bayley's attack caused injury on top of another injury. So you would think this means Sasha Banks, she's out for a long time in storyline. Of course, she is fine, but you would think she sits out for a while. Now, what they should do, they should have Sasha Banks sit out until the Royal Rumble. Right, well, what's the date today? It's the 11th of September. So we're a third through September. It's 4 months till the Royal Rumble. They should have her sit out until the Royal Rumble. Okay? And I know people will say, well, that's a long time. They've been building this for a very, very long time. 3 or 4 months is nothing at this point. So they should have Sasha Banks sit out until the Royal Rumble. She comes back at the Royal Rumble. She wins the Royal Rumble, and she faces Bayley at WrestleMania. To me, that is could be, and maybe should be, the main event of WrestleMania. And I know some people might find that controversial. Obviously, it's not the first time now that the females would have main evented WrestleMania. But I think, personally, it's a main event worthy match for WrestleMania. I really do. And it's worthy. It's absolutely worthy. Think about how long they've been doing this feud for, or they've been hinting at it, simmering at it. At this point, this feud has been bubbling over nicely for at least 2 years at this point, right? They were tag team champions. They were the first women's tag team champions in 2019. And they lost it at WrestleMania 35. Sasha Banks goes away. She comes back. Then Sasha Banks turns heel. Bayley turns heel. They partner up again. By the time WrestleMania 37 comes around, it will be 2 years since they had that match at WrestleMania 35. So yeah, it deserves to be a WrestleMania main event. Absolutely. Absolutely. So absolutely deserves to be a main event of WrestleMania. Absolutely. And by the time WrestleMania 37 comes around, like I said, this is a storyline that's going to be simmering for 2 years. So, I mean, a 2-year build is absolutely worthy of a WrestleMania main event. Absolutely. And before the pandemic, I think potentially we could have maybe seen this match earlier. We could have seen the breakup earlier prior to the pandemic. Because you have to remember that SummerSlam this year was scheduled to be in Boston, Massachusetts at the TD Garden. That's Sasha Banks' hometown. I think WWE officials and I think a lot of fans had kind of earmarked that being Sasha Banks is going to face Bayley at SummerSlam. It's in Boston. It's in Sasha Banks' hometown. TD Garden, it makes sense. They'd have done the split earlier. It just all of that came together nicely, and I think that would have made a lot of sense. But obviously, COVID's happened, the pandemic happened, that's off the table, and you have to turn a negative into a positive. Would it have been great to see the SummerSlam main event be Bayley versus Sasha Banks in Sasha Banks' hometown? Absolutely. It would have been phenomenal to see. COVID happened, turned a negative into a positive. Okay, we're not going to do SummerSlam. Let's drag it out a bit longer. It's been simmering for 2 years. Let's make it go longer. We can make it go longer. And as I mentioned, this video, the title of this video is called A Banks and Bayley Update. So what is going on with this storyline right now? Wow, there are numerous reports at this point that this storyline is going to get rushed. And after all this time, after 2 years, maybe even longer, of when are Bayley and Banks going to break up, they went to like couples counseling or tag team partnership counseling on Raw in, when was this? Early 2019, late 2018? I don't even know at this point. It was that long ago. Yeah, it's been bubbling for that long. And After all of this time, when is Bayley going to turn on Banks? Is Banks going to turn on Bayley? Both baby faces, both heels, tag team champions numerous times. They're both the SmackDown and Raw Women's Champion. All of this time, there is potential that this is going to get rushed. And that is concerning for me. That is very, very concerning for me. And I'll tell you why, but we'll have another quick check at the chat. Noob & Co says, who is going to face Asuka for the Raw Women's title since Shayna is the Women's Tag Team Champion with Nia? There is rumours, yes, you're going to love this, there is rumours that it's going to be Natalya. Yeah, not good. Not good at all. So there are rumours that it could be Natalya, which is worrying because I think everyone, nothing against Natalya, but it doesn't do anything for anyone really, does it? There was a rumour that it could be Mickie James as well. I would prefer it to be Mickie James, but we know that Asuka versus Mickie James is actually happening Monday on Raw, so I don't know. I can't give you a guaranteed answer on that one, but there is a rumour that it could be Natalya, which is concerning. Darkstar says, do you think Taker will return when fans come back? You know, I'm one of those people that I always struggle to believe that Undertaker has ever really done and truly done. The storyline ending that he had at WrestleMania last year, I think is as good as he's going to get at this point. And I know he would have probably wanted to do that final match in front of fans in a stadium, like was the plan at WrestleMania 36. But I don't know if an actual Undertaker versus AJ Styles true match, an Undertaker versus AJ Styles match inside of a wrestling ring, inside of a stadium, I don't think at this point in Undertaker's career, with his physical, how limited he is physically, I don't know that is going to be better than the Boneyard match. Probably not. And I understand that shoot was incredibly grueling. It was like a match, but you still had the magic of post-production and editing, and you don't have that when it's live in the ring. So that would be my concern. So I don't think so. I'd hope not. Brian says, you know what tomorrow is? The Premier League returns and we can't go to stadiums yet as cases are rising again. Wow, yes. I mean, it's slightly off topic, but yeah, Premier League's back tomorrow. But, COVID's still a thing. Some people try and admit that it's not, but it's still a thing. David Cook says, have Sasha come back at Summer Survivor Series and blindside Bayley and keep it going until Bayley agrees to put the belt on the line at WrestleMania, as long as they've not ruined it like they've done so many times before. Well, this is the thing. And I mentioned the concern is at this point that after all of this time that they've taken to build this storyline, that they're going to rush it. That is the concern. The reason that it's been reported that they split them up last week on SmackDown is because WWE creative, WWE officials were concerned that they could have potentially waited too long for this story. They were worried that maybe this whole storyline has overstayed its welcome. The split was always going to happen. Maybe we waited too long. We don't want to wait too long. Let's get the split done now. And I agree with them with that. I do get that. It has been 2 years, as I've mentioned a million times in this video so far. It has been 2 years, and maybe it was the right time to split it up, right? It's been going on for so long. I understand that you have to do the split at some point, and I think maybe the timing was right to split them up. And I think the way that Bayley and Sasha Banks have been handled this year has been fantastic. I really do think so. During those pandemic shows, I look at this year in chapters, and I think that's the best way to look at it. Throughout the whole year, if I was to say who is the true MVP of 2020 so far in WWE, I'd have to say Randy Orton. Throughout everything, Randy Orton has been phenomenal, and it really has been his year. But if you look at it in terms of chapters, those initial empty arena shows in the PC, the Raws and SmackDowns, where they didn't have everything set up and it was very awkward, the MVP of those shows for me was Asuka. She was absolutely fantastic, and that's why she got given the Raw Women's Championship when Becky Lynch left to go on maternity leave. That's why she's the Raw Women's Champion now, because she won over a lot of people higher up in WWE at that time. Once you go to the next chapter, which is those Performance Center shows, which had no crowds, but then had the Performance Center recruits in there. They'd kind of gotten their production style together. The MVPs of that chapter of the year, those pandemic shows, was Bayley and Sasha Banks. They were appearing on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. They won all the titles. Their segments were phenomenal. They were on commentary every week on Raw and SmackDown. Their promos were great. Everything was great. So they were the MVPs of that period of time. So I think the way that they've been handled this year, I think has been fantastic. I think the way they've been built up over the spring and the summer, winning all the bouts, and then the quick downfall as we've entered the fall now, I think has actually been very well done. And parts of this storyline have been very nuanced and very subtle, and you've had slight hints, slight looks, slight words, all of that sort of stuff. It's been very, very well done. But now, I think now is the time they need to go back to what they were doing before. Let it simmer. Let it simmer. You've just done the big angle last week, which everyone knew was coming. The only question was when, and is Bayley going to turn on Banks, or is Banks going to turn on Bayley? And you've done that, okay? Bayley turned on Sasha Banks last week, SmackDown. Perfect, done. Let it simmer now. Take your time. This is a big money feud. It really is. You've invested so much time into this match. It's a big money feud. Take your time. And there is a element of concern now from WWE officials, WWE creative members, that they don't have a big money female match that can be inside Hell in the Cell in October. So, this is my concern. They have this concern that there isn't a big female match they can have inside Hell in a Cell in October. My response to that, if they said that to me and I was in those meetings, was, guess what? Don't have it then. Don't have the female Hell in a Cell match. There's no need. There's no need. No one's crying out for it. If the opportunity isn't there, don't have it. And this is a bit of a tangent here, but this is my problem with these gimmick pay-per-views. Hell in a Cell, TLC, Elimination Chamber. All of those things, which were match concepts that they've shoehorned into pay-per-views, Money in the Bank too, they force things when they don't need to be forced. It's square pegs in round holes. Hell in a Cell, that match, used to be saved when the feud required it. Not an annual pay-per-view. Hell in a Cell was rare. You might go a whole year of not seeing a Hell in a Cell match. But when you saw it, it was because the storyline required it, and it made sense. It had logic to it. And now, the fact that every year we have a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view with multiple Hell in a Cell matches. I think we've had Hell in a Cell pay-per-views with 3 Hell in a Cell matches. There's no doubt in my eyes that it's devalued the match. It's absolutely devalued the match. And it's also meant that we've had Hell in a Cell matches over... When was the first Hell in a Cell pay-per-view? 2009? So that's like 11 years at this point. Over the last 11 years, we've had matches that shouldn't have been Hell in a Cell matches. They shouldn't have been inside Hell in a Cell. But because it's a pay-per-view and we need to have Hell in a Cell matches, they've been forced in there. And it hasn't felt needed. This match between Sasha Banks and Bayley, while I agree with him on the point that the Bayley versus Sasha Banks storyline and the match could absolutely be worthy of a Hell in a Cell match. It absolutely could be. And the feud would make sense. But it's too soon. It's way too soon. If this was going to be a Hell in a Cell match, save it for WrestleMania. The feud does make sense to be inside Hell in a Cell match. It doesn't make sense to be in a Hell in a Cell match next month. It's too soon. It's way too soon. Way too soon. Brian says, don't WWE rush everything. I won't be shocked if Vince is still doing the script while the show is airing. Well, there's been lots of discussions about that recently, hasn't there? Monday Night Raw has become Monday Night Raw rewritten as the show has been going on air. Those discussions have been... I'd like to say they have been crazy, but it's been going on for so long now. Whatever show is not Vince McMahon's priority, he rewrites about an hour before it goes on the air. You remember last year when SmackDown was still on the USA Network and it was SmackDown Live? Every Tuesday, this would be like clockwork, around 6 p.m., 7 p.m. Eastern Time, the story would come out, SmackDown is still being rewritten, Vince McMahon's torn up the script. And the reason is because Vince McMahon didn't pay a lot of attention at the time to SmackDown, because it wasn't the A show. Raw was the A show. He got the most money off Monday Night Raw. That changed when SmackDown moved to Fox and the $1 billion contract. And now SmackDown is the A show. It's viewed by more people than any show because it's on network TV, and they make more money from it. So that show is much more prepared and planned, and you don't hear SmackDown is getting rewritten as the show's going on the air. Monday Night Raw, you do. And also, in addition to that, Monday Night Raw lost its executive director earlier this year when they fired Paul Heyman. Bruce Pritchard is in charge of both shows, but he's really in charge of SmackDown. Raw is kind of the Wild West at this point creatively, let's be honest. So that will continue until they have a solid, firm direction for Monday Night Raw. There are rumors about Shane McMahon possibly becoming the executive director of that brand. That would be, I think, very good for it, to be honest, because, well, several reasons. One, he's Vince McMahon's son. So Vince is going to listen to his son, and he's going to have more leeway than maybe even Paul Heyman did. And having some structure and direction to that show, not having the last-minute rewrites, it's just better for the show. It's just better for the show. So, bit of a tangent there, but that's the case. We've got some viewers watching right now. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to WrestleNews 365. Do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner. If you haven't already as well, smash a like on the like button. It does really help us out on the algorithm here on YouTube. So, Sasha Banks and Bayley. Could it happen at Hell in a Cell in October? It could, but it shouldn't. It shouldn't. Sasha Banks, in my eyes, she needs to sit on the shelf. She needs to wait this out. Geez, she got attacked. She was injured before the attack last week, so that would mean she sits on the shelf anyway. But if she's taken to hospital, and you notice they're not calling it the local medical facility anymore, right? How many years have we heard the dreaded local medical facility? It's called a hospital now. We are actually living in a slight real world, WWE is. So Sasha Banks and Big E were both kayfabe injured last week on SmackDown, and they were taken to a hospital. Wow. No more local medical facilities, it would appear. Thank God. Again, the reason why, it's no massive surprise or breaking news. Vince McMahon just changes his mind. That's ultimately what it comes down to. For years and years, Vince will say it's not a hospital, it's a local medical facility because for some reason hospital offends him or he doesn't like the word hospital. And then one day he'll come in and go, why are we calling it a local medical facility? It's a hospital, damn it. And then suddenly it'll be a hospital again. So that's just a Vince McMahon-ism. It's a part of those long lists of words that are banned and then they get unbanned. He doesn't like the word straps, but Bayley called herself Bayley Doss Straps. The man is insane, really. So that's how that kind of deal works. So Sasha Banks, she needs to sit on the shelf. After this double injury and attack last week, she needs to sit on the shelf. Wait this out until the Royal Rumble. And come back at the Royal Rumble, and I think she'll win it. I think that she would be an early favourite at this point to win the Royal Rumble if they hold off on her returning this far. I mean, to be honest, even if she returns in October for Hell in a Cell, which I'd rather they don't, I still think she would be an early favourite to win the Royal Rumble. But I wouldn't want them to do that Bayley-Sasha Banks match this early. It doesn't make any sense, really. Logically, from an injury point of view, kayfabe point of view, storyline, a money point of view, it doesn't make any sense. Because also you have to factor in, come January for the Royal Rumble, potentially we might be looking at a scenario where we've got some fans back in an arena at that point. The latest update I've heard about WWE and the Royal Rumble is that they are actively scouting locations at this point. They're scouting cities. They're looking at the Northeast, I believe, for cities that they could use. So potentially we are looking at a situation where we're going to have fans next year at the Royal Rumble. We're not going to have a lot, but we're going to have some. I don't know if we've got any NFL fans, but I did watch the opening game of the NFL last night, and they had fans watching the Kansas City Chiefs there. So I'm assuming it'll be a scenario like that. We've seen fans back in AEW recently, about 500, 750 fans. We're getting to the stage now whereby, again, I mentioned it earlier in the stream, it's slightly concerning because in terms of COVID, nothing's really changed. It's still around. It hasn't disappeared. Cases still are on the rise in multiple places. Over here in the UK, there's a potential for a second wave, and we might even be looking at a second lockdown over here. And I know obviously in certain states it's different in the United States, but COVID isn't going away. The only thing that's changing per se is the understanding of it maybe, and the promotions in terms of WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, MLW, NWA, is their ability to try and do their very best to protect the talent. They have stringent protocols in place now, social distancing, mask wearing, testing. Testing is more widely available at this point, so that's why we're seeing fans come back into the grounds. That's why we're seeing the likes of MLW, NWA, Ring of Honor all return, because nothing's changed from a COVID point of view. What has changed is the understanding and how to put on a show around COVID. That's the only thing that's really changed at that point. So I think Royal Rumble, there's a high chance we're going to have fans. How many, I don't know. I would suggest maybe It's difficult to say. It depends on the venue. If they have a big stadium, then they can get more in. So I wouldn't really like to guess how many they could have. Maybe 1,000. Maybe 1,000. It depends. It depends how big the stadium is. If you've got a stadium that can hold 100,000 people, then maybe you could get 5,000-10,000 in there. It depends at the capacity, doesn't it? Because I think the capacity limit at the moment is about 10 to 15%. So it would depend. It would really depend. But going back to my point, Sasha Banks, she needs to sit on the shelf, sell the injury, take time away, wait until the Royal Rumble, return to the Royal Rumble. There should be fans there by that point. Get a bit of a pop, make a bit of a Royal Rumble moment, come back at the Rumble, win it, and then she can face Bayley for the SmackDown Women's Championship at WrestleMania 37. I think it could be the main event. I think maybe it should be the main event. If they do it right, this can be a main event, a WrestleMania main event angle. And also you have to factor in, by that point, in just her second title reign, Bayley would have held the SmackDown Women's Championship for something like, 500 plus days? 2? Maybe even longer? And if you're going to add in her previous reign, which was actually just cut short by a week because of the Charlotte Flair loss, which I think was at Hell in a Cell last year, you're looking at something even longer, something probably like 700 plus days, something ridiculous. So it makes sense. It makes sense that Wait. That would be my advice. Wait. Don't rush this. You can do something really special here. Bayley can have a super long title reign. Sasha Banks can win the Rumble and come back and end this title reign at WrestleMania in the main event. It makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world, unless they rush it and think we need to have the match at Hell in a Cell. But they don't. And that just highlights the problem of numerous problems, really. It highlights the problem of, one, WWE doesn't plan things in advance, they rush things. 2, you've got these gimmick pay-per-views that force things that don't need to be forced. If this was a generic pay-per-view in October, like Payback, you can do whatever you want, because it's just a title of a pay-per-view. When the title of your pay-per-view is a gimmick match, you force things. And if it's a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view and you insist on having it, just have one Hell in a Cell match. It doesn't need to be Bayley versus Sasha Banks. It really doesn't need to. Do something else. Have Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton. By that point, that feud, considering what they've done to each other, would make sense to have inside of a Hell in a Cell. That would work. Have that as your main event. Don't force it. Don't force it and don't rush it. And I'm hoping they don't rush it at this point, because it would be such a waste. It would just be such a waste. Think about it. You've built this storyline for potentially 2 years, even longer. As a fan, you've been invested in this storyline for 2 years, and you've seen the ups, you've seen the downs, you've seen them win things, lose things, turn heel, be a babyface, all of that sort of stuff. You've seen it all. Why, at this point, for me, it would leave a bad taste in my mouth, honestly, if it was rushed and it just was over by Hell in a Cell, and they're like, oh, we did it. I'd be like, oh, it could have been more. It could have been more. And I know that's par for the course, I suppose, when it comes to WWE storylines. It could have been more. That could be their slogan every time they open up the show. Not then, now, forever. WWE, it could have been more. Put that on a t-shirt. Probably, maybe go to our merch site. Maybe we'll put that on. But they've got a shot here. Take their time. And realistically, again, you've built this for 2 years. What at this point is an extra 3 or 4 months? It's really nothing. In the grand scheme of things, it really is nothing. And it will mean more. It would mean more to you and I as a fan. It would mean more to WrestleMania. It's a WrestleMania-worthy match. And look at the matches that Bayley and Sasha Banks have had in the past. Arguably, one of the greatest NXT TakeOver matches and one of the greatest matches in NXT history is Bayley versus Sasha Banks, NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 2015. You will do very, very well to find a better NXT TakeOver match. You will do very, very well to find a better female match. To be honest, gender's got nothing to do with it. You'll do better to find a better match. That crowd, that moment, Bayley's first NXT Women's Championship victory. Sasha Banks at that point had been champion for a long time. It was a coming out movement. Realistically, Finn Balor and Kevin Owens had to follow that, and they couldn't. It was a good match. I think it was a ladder match, but they couldn't. Bayley and Sasha Banks stole the show and the entire weekend at that point, and they can do it again. They can absolutely do it again. But the storyline is crucial. The venue is crucial. The event is crucial. I'm sure they'd have a great match inside Hell in a Cell, Bayley and Sasha Banks. But they'd have an even better match in the main event of WrestleMania It would mean a lot more to them, obviously, as performers. It would mean a lot more to us as fans. And then also, I think it would be great for women's wrestling, because even though the females main event at WrestleMania 35 and you had Becky Lynch, Ronda Rousey and Charlotte Flair, which is, by the way, a match you can't do now because none of them are currently active in WWE, which is insane. But also, I think sometimes that WrestleMania 35, it was a massive moment for women's wrestling, but it kind of, people might look back on it like a bit of a novelty. And I don't mean that disparagingly, but that people might look back on it as to, well, they wanted to do the whole PR women's main event deal. They did it, they won't do it again. If you do it again, and you have Bayley versus Sasha Banks main event WrestleMania, that proves, from a WWE point of view, that we didn't just do that as a novelty. We didn't just do that so it could be the first main event had females in WrestleMania history. If you do it again 2 years later, then you're proving, hey, this is the deal. Women's wrestling is a focal point in our company. It's here to stay. It draws. You can have great matches, and you can draw money. So that's why I think they should do it again. And I think they should take their time and have this be the main event of WrestleMania 37. And tonight on SmackDown, Bayley is going to address her attack. So we'll see. I'm sure she'll have some heel storyline reasoning for why she attacked her best friend and all of that lovely stuff. Bayley recently, in terms of her promos, has just been phenomenal. I will say that when she turned heel initially last year, she kind of had this sort of weird, because obviously she was the hugger, super happy role model kind of deal. And then she transitioned into this sort of weird, sort of dystopian heel, very plain-faced, didn't smile, always looked miserable. And she sort of transitioned into a heel now that's a bit more outlandish, a bit louder, in your face. And I think that version of Bayley as a heel has been really, really good. That's been a lot of fun. And Vince McMahon is a huge fan of Bayley. By all accounts, in recent meetings, creative meetings, he singled out 3 female superstars that he's big fans of. He mentioned Bayley. He thinks her new heel persona is fantastic. He mentioned Bianca Belair, who I'm glad he said that, because she is, to me, she is money. Absolute money. She can do things that a lot of the other female superstars just can't do. She is going to be a huge, huge star. And the other one was Peyton Royce, and we've seen the Iconics split up for better or for worse. In my opinion, they shouldn't have done it, but he's a big fan of Peyton Royce, and that's the reason that they split up on Raw, and she's getting a push right now. So I think that I would hope that they hold this out to WrestleMania. Vince is a fan of Bayley. They know the money that's involved in this program. It makes a lot of sense. So tonight, Bayley's going to address the attack. She'll cut a great heel promo. Her promo is very, very good. The more she's gotten into this heel shtick, she's really a lot of fun on promos. My concern is, though, if it's anything like Drew McIntyre. Remember, Drew McIntyre got kicked in the head 3 times and missed 2 weeks, or 1 week, of TV. He was back in 2 weeks, missed 1 week of TV. So, and he was driving an ambulance, even though it was 2 weeks later. So I'm guessing he was just driving around in an ambulance for ages. He'd stole it. I don't know. But if it's anything like Drew McIntyre, Sasha Banks will be back in 2 weeks and they'll have the match at Hell in a Cell. Or even Clash of Champions. Could you imagine? I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked at this point. But here's hoping that they take time and they save it for WrestleMania, because it's the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do. Let's double check the chat before we wrap this up then. How far back do we go? 59 Cent Rage Hamilton says, hello, how you doing, my friend? David Cook says, WWE used to take the rise out of WCW for rewriting within an hour and if not during Nitro, of going on TV. But Vince is doing this now. It's complete hypocrisy. Well, it's a very good point, David, because, again, WWE used to mock Nitro for it. We used to hear those stories, those horror stories about the creative of Nitro not knowing what was going on till you left the curtain and all of that sort of stuff. They also, if you go back and watch the WWE Network, go back and watch a Monday Night Raw episode from 1997 or 1998. They are very, very big on mentioning this is where young talent thrives in the WWE. Not in WCW, where you've got people with artificial hips, and in WCW they promise events and they don't deliver. And they don't have old superstars. This is the young, modern superstars. WWE is WCW at this point. It really is. They advertise things that they don't deliver on. They also have multiple elderly superstars, right? They mocked Hulk Hogan in WCW, and then they brought him back and did the exact same thing. They said that they mocked him and Roddy Piper for having artificial hips. The Undertaker's got 2 of them, and he They still trot him out. I don't think anymore, but you get my point. WWE has a very short memory when it comes to this thing, and you're right, it is hypocrisy. Brian says, Hell in a Cell used to be great, but now it's rotten. Look at the last couple. Wow, yeah. Look at those last 2 finishes of the last 2 Hell in a Cell pay-per-views. Last time, you had The Fiend versus Seth Rollins, and I just got that out of my mind, so thanks for bringing that back, Brian. But, yeah, what a nightmare that was, quite literally. And then the year prior, you had it end in a no contest. So you had it 2 in a row end in no contest, which is just the opposite of what Hell in a Cell should be. Just terrible. 49% Rage Hamilton says, I don't like Vince McMahon, ruined talent like Ricochet and other good talents in WWE. Wow, if you want to get my opinion on that, we've done videos on that on the channel. I think Ricochet should go back to NXT, personally. He also says, my honest opinion is that Vince McMahon needs to retire in WWE. Triple H needs to take over WWE to make the product look good like NXT. Well, I hate to break it to you, but Vince McMahon is never going to retire. He will die in his big corporate chair or in gorilla position. Triple H, if when Vince McMahon goes, I don't think Triple H is even going to take over the product. It's more likely, I think the contingency plan for when Vince McMahon does go is that Shane McMahon is probably going to take over the company, which would have surprised people a few years ago. But Triple H is just responsible for NXT at this point. I don't even think he's going to take over the entirety of WWE or its product, which is surprising to some people, but I think, as of right now, that's the plans for WWE. But to be honest, I don't even think they think about it that much, because Vince McMahon is probably going to outlive you or I. He is going to live till he's 500 years old. Somewhere there is a painting that is getting older whilst he stays alive. So he has, obviously, the elixir of life, it would appear at this point. So, I don't know. But that will round it up for today, guys. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. We are very close at this point to 800 subscribers. I will double check now. We will do a live subscriber check. Isn't this exciting? We'll do a live subscriber check. 786 subscribers at this point in time. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel as we make it to 800 subscribers on the long road to 1,000. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, a little insider baseball here. Once we get to 1,000 subscribers, we can actually monetize this channel. So we can actually... so you can support the channel just by watching the videos. So that would be amazing. Just to, to be honest, having nearly 800 subscribers to listen to me talk about pro wrestling stuns me every day. So I really do appreciate it. So if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel as we get to 800 subscribers. As I mentioned previously, if you smash a like on this video too, that would be amazing, because that really does help us out here on YouTube. If you get more likes on your video, it gets more people to see the video that hasn't seen them previously, or the channel. So you would be doing me a massive favor if you do smash a like on that video, on the video too. You can also donate to Wrestle News 365 if you want to kick a little bit back to the channel. If you like what we do, you can go to streamlabs.com/Wrestle News 365 and submit a PayPal donation. Any donations are really appreciated. Let's double check the chat quickly before we round this up. Brian says it will be sold to Disney. Well, that is actually, I mean, you're not wrong. It is a possibility. Disney is the ultimate monster in buying up companies. So it's an absolute possibility. David says, have a great weekend. Wrestle News 365, the best channel going. Really appreciate it, my friend. Appreciate all the support of everyone sticking out and coming to watch here on a Friday afternoon with us. But before we go, let's have a quick word from one of our great presenters of Wrestle News 365. That's Manscaped. You can take advantage of our offer with Manscaped right now. Thanks a lot, guys. Speak to you soon. Support for Wrestle News 365 is brought to you by Manscaped, who is the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Now, Manscaped, for all of my UK fans out there, Manscaped just launched in the UK. Over here in the United Kingdom, we have gone for years and years and years without using the right tools for the job. But now you can be one of the first men in England to experience their life-changing product. But it's not just limited to all of the great fans over here in the UK. This offer goes worldwide, so all of my friends over in America and around the world that are listening to this offer still does apply for you. You can still use our code. But I've got to tell you a quick story first. Now, there have been so many times, right? I'm a guy. You gotta groom down there, fellas, right? That's the most important thing. You gotta keep yourself trimmed. You gotta keep yourself proper. And a lot of the time, I've been guilty of this, of using the wrong tools for the job. I've had incidences, I'm not afraid to say it, where things have been nicked, snagged, or in fact cut down there because I wasn't being careful enough and using the right equipment. Now that just shouldn't happen. That shouldn't happen. You don't want to be worrying about cutting yourself down there. Do you know how painful that is? I can tell you, it hurts quite a lot, and I wish and hope to God it never happens to me again, and it won't happen to me ever again because I'm using Manscaped products. That's why Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team has perfected the greatest ball hair trimmer ever created. Big statement, but it's absolutely true. They have just released the new and improved Lawnmower 3.0 in the UK. It's also available around the world as well. Their third generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. So those cuts and snags that I was telling you about before are a thing of the past. And let me tell you, when I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes so you can get a longer, perfect shave. And not only that, you don't want to be cutting yourself and trimming yourself all over the bathroom, getting hair all over the place. That's just disgusting. The lawnmower has a waterproof technology that allows you to groom in the shower, so no more mess. And one of the coolest features, one of my favourite features about the lawnmower is the LED light which illuminates grooming areas for a closer and more precise trimming experience. So you can shave longer, you can shave more precisely, and you can shave in the shower. What more did I need to tell you? They've also upgraded to a 7,000 RPM motor with quiet stroke technology, and let's not forget about the charging stand. You can show off your mower loud and proud because this intelligently designed stand is a convenient charging dock powered by USB. So, if you are listening to me speak right now, I want you to experience it firsthand for yourself. Let's get that bush to tush clean, and you can get 20% off and free shipping. Yeah, you heard me right there. 20% off and free shipping. All you have to do is use the code 365wrestle at manscaped.com. Make your testies their besties. That's 20% off and free shipping. Not only are you getting 20% off, you're getting free shipping as well with the code 365wrestle at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the code 365wrestle. Your balls will thank you.